Hello, and welcome to another episode of Set-4-Life Conversations, where we help you get your mind right and your money right by discussing life strategies for the everyday person. I'm your host, Thomas Lacoma, and each episode will spend some time with financial advisor, pastor, and motivational speaker, published author, and former college athlete, George Thompson, as he shares with us wisdom that you can put into practice today. In today's episode, we have a discussion about risk and your money. We talk about how to think about risk more strategically and offer suggestions on how to manage it. Hey George, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome, Thomas.
Okay, so today I want to talk about a word that I think some people have as a dirty word or a cuss word in their minds. That word is the word risk. Oftentimes, people associate risk with either danger or something going wrong. I think that's why some people stay away completely from things like investing or doing something entrepreneurial where they could improve their financial situation, mostly because they're scared of losing money or they think it's dangerous or they just want to be safe. So I wanted to have a discussion today about risk and how you can help people to have a better understanding of what it actually is, and more importantly, how to manage it properly, because there are times when there's risks that you shouldn't be taking. So I just want to give people a more balanced view of what risk is.
Gosh, that is great. I spend a great part of my day talking about risk because you talk about risk and then there's the fear of it, but then also there's risk versus reward. And the more we understand about risk is the better we're able to manage things and also understand about the process. So I think it's good. And there'll be a lot of, so I pray this is really good information to help people, but we got to understand risk and how to manage it.
Okay, so let's start off just talking about what exactly is risk.
Okay. Risk is something, quite simply to say, risk is the probability of something happening that is bad, or actually the risk is this, actually something that it can happen good. So it deals with the area of probability. So let's just start with some basic tenets of like, why does somebody get car insurance? They get car insurance to indemnify you against a loss. So really, if you look at it, I wanted to share something on my screen. There's really only 4 things that you can actually do with that. So here, let's look at this. Let me give you an example. So with risk, you can do certain things. The first thing you can do is you can ignore it. But now I want to start with this with risk also. You have to make a decision. So that's the thing that some people say is that, oh, I don't want to make a decision. That's not true. You made a decision by doing that. So the first thing is I'm going to ignore it. So that means if you're driving a car, I'm going to ignore it. That means if I crash this car, I'll buy another one. But you can't really ignore this with a car because suppose you hit somebody else. And I live in California, so if you hit a car, if you hit a Lamborghini, then all right, we'll see if you do that. Okay, cool. You can avoid risk. That means you're going to walk everywhere, or you're going to have someone else driving. But then you still have risk in case they get in a car accident and you're involved in it and you're doing it. And then manage. I'm going to come back to that, and then transfer. That means you're going to buy car insurance. So with risk, one of the things we want to do is we want to manage it. That means we're going to drive with our hands at 10 and 2, but then also we're going to own car insurance. But then also, this is the other part with this. We're going to avoid certain things as well. We're not going to drive at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going to drive. We're going to not be texting. We're not going to do certain things. We're going to manage. What can we manage? Ourselves in doing what? Reduce the risk, but then still get the desired outcome.
Yeah.
So that's how we really want to look at how we manage things and how we do that. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make is they say, I'm not going to do something, or I haven't decided yet. I'm going to repeat this. I already said, is it actually when you haven't decided, you've decided. You've decided not to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we said right now, I always talk about food. If we said we're going to open up a restaurant, they'll say there's a lot of risk in that. Let's think about that and do it. I'm like, but then there might be opportunity right now. So you want to look at certain things and doing things, and there's different costs, and one
Mm.
of them is called opportunity cost. I'll
Yeah.
repeat it 3 times. Opportunity cost. That means if you bought something, and by the way, we're not talking about. I'm using investments just as an example. If you want investment advice and everything, you have to come to our sites and do that. But for example, someone will say, "I want to invest right now in the markets, but are they too high? It's too risky."
Mm.
But they say, if we don't invest, is it too risky? Because right now, money markets are paying 0.02 and 0.01. That
Mm.
means you put in $100,000 and they give you $10 or $20. I don't
Mm.
know if you put gas in your car lately, but it costs more than that just to put gas in your car.
Mhm.
So what you're doing is you're actually taking risk by not doing things, because later on people I did an investment seminar yesterday, and someone said, should I put in money in my 401k even though the company isn't matching? I'm like, yes. Or they'll say the company only matches 3%. I'm going to put in 3%. No, you want to put in as much as you can afford to put in, because you can't go to a grocery store 20 years from now and say this. When prices are all inflated, or you want to go on a trip, or you want to do things, and say, hey, can you lower all the price of food or give me free
Mhm.
airline tickets? Because my company only put in 3%. So I'm
Yeah.
going to put in 3%. Or I didn't invest because I thought the markets were down.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to have a proper understanding of risk so that you understand reward. And
Mhm.
a lot of it deals in the area of knowledge. I'll say one more thing that I want to go back to is this. A lot of times when I'm talking to people about risk is understanding how values work. Like, in other words, like the markets may go up and down, but if you own good companies, you own them, then we just keep owning them. We don't sell things when they go down, or we don't have to do it, because we understand that there are short-term risks, but you have to take short-term risks to get long-term rewards in
Mhm.
doing that. So yes.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thought. I love what you were talking about with insurance, because um, the inaction actually creates the risk for you. If you think about it, with if you don't get the car insurance, the time when the adverse event happens, even if you didn't take any action, you're just like, I'm not going to think about it. You
Right.
are going to have to think about it when the adverse event happens.
But the reason why,
So,
yeah, I'm sorry, can I jump in? Because I'm so excited about what you're saying. But it's really the opportunity. Like you say,
yeah.
okay, I don't want a car. Okay, well then you can't have a job. You have to have a car to get to the job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're saying there, or you say, well, I want a job where I don't have to have a car. Well, then that limits. Do you see what I'm saying? It
Mhm.
limits the jobs that you can do.
Yeah.
If somebody says, I need to meet with you today at 3 o'clock and it's 1, you say, okay, well, I'm gonna call Uber, I'm gonna do that. But now, by the way, if you're in DC, or my twin sister lives in DC, or places where she sold her car, and I understand, but just understand that it opens up to so many more opportunities
Yeah.
if you have a car, and if you understand risk and you're doing it and you're making a decision, it can get you so much further along. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So let's take it. I guess you had those four buckets. You had ignore. What was the next one?
I
You
had
could
ignore.
ignore.
Here we go.
Let's go.
Avoid.
Ignore, avoid, manage, transfer.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the ignore. If you ignore it, you're still making a decision. you know,
Exactly.
something's going to happen. Now, the avoid piece is a very interesting one, because that's what we start talking about with somebody who says, "Oh, the markets are real crazy. I'm not going to take advantage of that." I was thinking, as you were talking about, a lot of times what people don't think about is inflation.
Right.
Over time, things trend upwards in terms of how much
Right.
they cost. So somebody who is like, I think a old school way to think about this was that I made some money and I'm saving it. I'm going to put it under my mattress because I don't want, I don't trust the bank. I don't trust, putting in anything. But if I have it under the mattress, when I need it, it'll be there. The problem, like you said, is that when you go, 10 years later to get that money out of the mattress, it's not worth things have gotten more expensive, so that money can only buy less than what it
Right.
could have. So you've actually lost money in that instance because your money has devalued. So for somebody with that mentality, like how do you kind of get into trying to help them think through that?
Well, a
The
couple
person who
things.
tries to avoid.
We have to manage being avoiding. I
Hmm.
think that we answered the question earlier, is that I think the people that are avoiding are saying, I'm not making a decision, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand they've made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So it's procrastinating. Like, in other words, there's people saying, I'm going to put the money in the bank until it reaches a certain point. Then I'm going to invest, or I'm waiting for something.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's certain strategies we use for that, and that's called dollar cost averaging, where you put in a
Mm-hmm.
certain amounts every month to do that, to do things. But also, it's either, sometimes the avoidance comes from they made a decision before, and then something went down, like the markets, or I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to switch over to business in a moment. The
Mm-hmm.
markets gone down, then they took the money out, and now there are people that sold in March, let's say, when the markets went down from the pandemic, and then now they see now the markets have come back. Now they're saying, "Oh, I'm waiting for them to go back down," instead of having a strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
the answer to going out of avoiding everybody is having a strategy that works to
Mm-hmm.
get you out of it. So that's with investing. But now I'd also like to go to businesses.
Mm-hmm.
There's many people that are working, and I want to let you know, if you're working, keep working. Okay. And you have that and doing that generally. But also, if you want to start or open a business, then open the business, but keep doing your day to day, your bread and butter job, and then until that business can grow. But don't wait on a business. Start building that and start working on that right now. So, understanding risks in business, and that's why you want to have a strategy to do these things and to walk through them. But that's the solution for avoidance, and ignoring is very expensive.
Yeah.
So those areas. So in doing that.
Yeah. So before we continue, I just want to let everybody know, if you're new here, welcome to the show. We release new episodes every Friday morning. So if you have a topic you'd like us to cover on finances, productivity, biblical stewardship, or anything else that captures your imagination as you're listening to us, look for the link in the show notes where you can drop us a message, voice message. We listen to everyone. So we're looking for to make sure that this show is relevant to what you care about. So, as you were talking, George, I was thinking about something that somebody shared with me early on, I think in my 20s, which is the idea of, and you can think about it in your personal life, and then eventually this also applies to investing. And that's the idea that you don't ever want to have your eggs in one basket. And I think that's where you were going with the if you have your job, keep your job. But what you always have to pay attention to is that the more you can have different places that income is coming into your household,
Right.
uh, that's a way of managing the risk of one of those income sources going away. So, for example, somebody who has just their job, when they get laid off, income goes to zero. Somebody who had their job, but maybe had like a rental property, or they have, like a little side hustle where they take some skill they have and they're making a little bit of money on the side. Maybe when the job goes to zero in that interim, rather than just relying on unemployment, they can actually scale up one of those other things that they were doing. So let's just talk a little bit about that. I think the word is diversification.
Yes. So one of the things is, and then I'm going to try my hardest not to talk to all about the markets right now, but if there was ever a time to be diversified, it is right now.
Hmm.
So first of all, let's talk about diversification with business and income.
Hmm.
Is that you want to have it coming from the north, south, east, and west.
Hmm.
So let's start with you having income. So you probably have a primary job that you have. Then you may have another business that you're running. Active, can you say active income? Everybody
Hmm.
say active income. I know I'm talking to you, but I just want you to play along with me. I want you to start saying these words so they start speak life into them. So you have what's called active income. That's your primary job, and then you may have businesses that you're running. Okay.
Hmm.
So again, I always start off with restaurants. Now, I don't own a restaurant. I don't do one, but I like to eat, and I'm a foodie. And if you're a foodie, shoot me a just shoot me a email text, tell me you're a foodie, because we go whenever I go to a city, I Yelp whatever the restaurant is food. I don't even look. They say, "Can I have a menu?" I said, "No, I want this right here." So I'm doing that.
You know exactly what to get.
That's why I always bring up food. It's just examples.
Hmm.
So then if you say you're going to open up a restaurant, then you're going to start, you're working somewhere, then you start catering, you start taking that income, you start building it. That's active income. Then I want you to say passive income. All
Mm.
right. Passive income is you start doing real estate, because you see how economies go up and down. I'm going to swing into that in a moment. And So then you start buying properties, and then you look at rentals. So just so you know, when you have rental income, like right now, rentals are high right now because now there are people that had, people at different levels, and there's now people that were buying a home and now they're renting, and a lot of people aren't moving the way they were uh,
Mm,
before, and there's different areas. So you want to have rental income. Then you also have investments. That's also passive income. You're putting money in there, and then that's also moving around, and that's also passive income. And then you want to be able to have that coming on all sources to be able to do that. And there are varying levels of risk, but just how you want to manage is that you want to take the least amount of risk to get the highest rate of return,
hmm
and you want to manage it. And there's something called conservative. That's where you just want to just mainly just keep your principal. Then there's something, so that's conservative. Then there's something called moderately conservative, where you're conservative, but you're moving more moderate. Then moderate means that, like, if you're doing investments, that's like half stocks, half bonds.
hmm
Then there's something called moderately aggressive. That's like 70, 80, 60, 70% stocks, and 40% bonds, and 30% bond. And then there's aggressive, that's in 80 and up and above in that area. So that's investments. But then also you can be conservative with your business, and you're doing things. So what you want to do is run them, but then you want to manage risk. Like, in other words, when you have a business, have 3 months in reserve sitting there.
hmm
Or you quit your job, make sure you're making more than what you were making before.
Yeah, and
Doing
take
things.
into account that taxes work differently when you a business versus when you're an employee, right? You got to
Right.
factor in all of these different things.
Oh, and let's do one more since you brought that up. That you got to pay for everything. Like, people say, I made, they'll say, I made six figures in this business, or it's making a lot of money. But then after you take out all your expenses of rent, this, that, all the
hmm
stuff, is your net higher as high as what you were making when you work for the company?
Yeah.
And leverage, and learn to leverage things. That's why you're doing it. That means transfer some of the risk. Like, hey, maybe you need to bring on a partner when you first start off.
hmm
Hey, when you buy a property, they're really smooth. Hey, you might want to. So start learning how to collaborate and work. So you want to, what's called, I'm not going to use terms like mitigate, but you want to, I'm going to say reduce the
hmm
risk. So every time you look at a situation, say, if I do it, what are some ways I can reduce the risk?
mm
And you're doing that because that's actually what an insurance company does when they have something called an underwriter. So they're seeing what the level of risk they're taking on.
hmm
When you buy a home, there's something called an underwriter. They're
Yeah.
seeing what the probability of, I'm sorry, let's talk about you, Thomas. You have a home, and
hmm
so when you go through escrow, there's someone that's trying to figure out your credit score is telling you what your interest rate is. Because they're
hmm
seeing, hey, how often does Thomas pay? I got Thomas on the hot seat, everybody.
hmm
Uh, how do they pay back their money?
hmm
How has your
hmm
history been in doing that? Then your income dictates how much home you can buy.
Yeah.
What are they really doing? They're seeing, can you afford to buy a house? This is
Yeah.
Thomas, this is me, this is everybody. So they're looking at how much risk they're taking on, and they're seeing if you can afford it.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, we should know this before we go down there. Like, in other
Yeah.
words, if I qualify for I'm just using $700,000 house, then I'm going to buy a $500,000 house. I'm not going to go if I buy a $750,000 house, I have to work overtime to pay it. Then if we get a tight time, then right, that's a little bit more risky than if
Yeah.
I buy this 500 and I can make extra payments and pay the house off earlier. So you understand?
Exactly.
So there's something called risk, and then, oh, here I come, Thomas. And there's something called stewardship, and there's good
Yeah.
money management. So
Yeah.
you want to be able to manage all of them. So you want to manage you got to manage your personal life. You also got to manage. You have to open up a business life. In other words, like, even if you work for a company, you got Thomas Inc. You know what I mean? Like,
hmm
you got George Inc. You got whatever. Say your name out loud right now, Inc. And start
hmm
saying that, just like Sanford's son. Remember back in the day, he said the Sanford Arms, and he'd look around and say, "Son, one day this will all be yours." And son looking around like, "This is a junkyard." I applaud the mindset, though. I
Yeah.
applaud the mindset, though.
Yeah.
You understand that? Look at what you have. We should take an inventory of it and say, how do I increase it? But then also, what risk do I need to take on to increase it?
Yeah.
Like, and then, though, you do need to sit down. Now we're talking about investments here for a second, but you do need to sit down with a financial advisor and decide, like, before you start changing around your 401k and investments, and sit down with someone that can talk to you about risk, and there's risk tools out there to show you different things to help
Yeah.
you to
Yeah, that's
understand
actually a
what you're
good
doing.
point that I was thinking about while you were talking is that um, for me, something like risk, it's very important to have ways to measure or to determine what do I think the risk is in this particular situation or this particular investment and so on. And then to keep an eye on that, right? So let's talk about that. Like, what are some ways that you can help people? Let's leave investment aside because I think really with investments you should use a professional or
Right.
like have somebody who this is what they do and they can help you to move that stuff around. But just in general, like how do you help people to think in that way? Because again, we're talking about risk versus risky, so you
Right.
think that I'm going to just jump in, all I like what you said about the if you're trying to transition into being a business owner, not to just jump out before you know how much money your company makes after all of its expenses, how taxes work, all of these different things. Before you answer, I actually just thought of another interesting point. Uh, I was on a call, I think last week, where it's a bunch of brothers and we're just kind of sharing with each other. And one of the brothers was seeking advice in terms of his desire is to start a restaurant at some point, and he had been offered an opportunity to work for a person who runs a restaurant and to manage it. And he was wondering whether that was kind of shortcutting his dream, because if he started working with somebody, is he never going to get to the point where he owns? And it was very interesting. Most of the brothers who shared back to him, it was very wise. What they were saying was that perhaps this is God giving you the
That's the
opportunity
best
to
opportunity.
learn how this thing actually works, learn all of the where the bodies get buried in that particular business, so that when you are running it, you're not surprised. It's almost like a getting paid to get trained for
Right.
how you're going to do that vision.
That is exactly what I was going to say. I mean, that is a blessing in them doing that. And I'm glad you used a restaurant, by the way, because
Mhm.
that involves food. Um, but you see, like he can go to that company and learn like how does distribution work? Who
Mm,
did he order the food from?
mm.
How often, when do you have to pay him? Is it net 30? Net 30 means like how soon
Soon
after
you
you
have to
get
pay. Yeah.
how do you get fresh vegetables? Do you get how much do you order of it, all the food? Now, if you guys already know all this stuff, I don't. So I
Mhm.
rather tell you how to manage. But
And
see, you
every
have to
business
learn
has its
you have to
intricacies like that.
learn those intricacies.
Mhm.
And then what is your margins? In other words, like, do you have a 30% profit margin? Is it like, and is that sustainable? How do you run specials? How do you do this? And because I've seen when people have done it the opposite way. They start off serving very big portions, paying this, all this stuff, music. And then when they started losing money or they weren't doing as well financially, they started making the portions smaller.
Mhm.
You guys, then that takes all the people that are loyal. Think about the restaurants you go to. If they started giving you half as much food for the same price, what would you do? You'd stop going. So
You'll
then,
find somewhere
so
else
now
to go.
now are they not getting new people? They're cutting off the people that they had that were coming before. That's a great way. That is a great way to learn. And doing that, so that's what that's what someone should do.
Mhm.
But I want to back up to your first question. So
About the
somebody
measuring.
wants to
Yep.
understand about measuring risk. This is the first thing that you actually want to do is write down what all of your ideas are. So let's look at where they are right now. Is there is there's also let's look at the area. So if someone opens up a business, this is true about your finances, and this is true in all yours. Write down what they all are, and
Mhm.
then write down what the goal is,
Mhm.
and then write down the facts. The facts, like in other words, this is a business. Switching to coffee now. This is how much people drink of it, or this is how
Mhm.
much people, if you do food, how much people eat of it. Doing things, and then go over risk analysis. Like you can do the SWOT, all those different things. But I mean, to look at, like saying, like, are you opening up a fried chicken place? How many other places are there that do that exact same thing? If you're doing clothes,
Mhm.
how many of them are doing it, and how are they doing? You know, so you're looking at all those things. Whether you're
Mhm.
going to do all those analysis. I use a couple. I have a couple I use in different things, but I just want to make sure we're sitting there. But I just use SWOT because it came to my my thing, and doing it. So but you want to have a way of evaluating it.
SWOT means strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats,
And
right?
threats. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's also this other book. It's called The Six Hats of Thinking by De Bono. So there's also another one that you want
Hmm.
to use that, and they have those hats. Okay, and a way of managing it. I would use that one first. But I want to say, but first is just write down the facts
Hmm.
that there are, and then again write down what your strengths are, and then but most important is your desires, is how much you want to invest in that and time, and then this other part. Write down your emotions. Like, in other words, like, how do you feel when certain things happen? Like, there are people that, that's why I figured how bad you want it. Well,
Mm,
hey, when the margins are down, like, is it important for you to make this amount of money, or is it important for you to open up your business? That's the question I would have asked the gentleman.
mm,
Like, hey, do you want to open up a business for opening up a business sake, or in doing this because there's so many opportunities? If he's the general manager of that guy's restaurant, he can do that for a period of time. I didn't say a couple of years, a period of time, because I don't know how long that would be,
mhm.
whether it's 6 months or five. And then he can say, I want to open up my own. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say he's cooking burrito taco. He's cooking food, and he
Mhm.
wants to open up his own one, a different style. He can come to him and say, hey, I'd like to open up my own one, and maybe he can manage both. Like, open his
Mm,
own restaurant, but then still help manage that one. Then
mhm.
maybe what, share distributors, share
Yeah.
things, look at how they can help with costs and partner. But then say, and I know he has a pride of ownership. So hey, I want 100% of this company,
Mm,
in this. But then he can. But what is he doing by having a partner, and by doing this, and by knowledge? What is he doing? Reducing his risk.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yes, it's interesting how I love what you're saying about operating on facts. Sometimes I watch this show Shark Tank,
Uh,
where people come and pitch their ideas, and there's something which I always know somebody is going to get destroyed by the sharks when they ask them, what are your sales, and
right.
the person either starts to stutter or they say a number but they don't say a time period. So they
Right.
say, we have 1 million in sales, and then a shark has to ask over how much time. Over the past 5 years, how much did you put in? We put in like 900,000. So you
Right.
actually, haven't really like this is not like a viable. So that idea of being really good with the numbers involved, I think, is important. It comes down to even with real estate. I know every time that we have had to purchase a home. This is our, we've done it a couple of times. It's back to what you were saying. I always looked at it as not just what is the purchase price for the property, because if you're assuming a property is going to go up in value, that can sometimes backfire, and if the market changes and so on. So when you get into the property, it needs to be a good situation for you. You need to be able to afford that monthly payment. And the other thing is that to take into account, if your monthly payment is going up, what else is going up? Is it a bigger house? Is the utilities going up?
Right.
Is all these different things. So these are all numbers that you can put down on a piece of paper. For me, I put them in a spreadsheet and I just lay everything out and I can see it. Once I find for myself, when I learned this in my 20s. There was one time when I was really, my margins for living were very tight. Like I was often looking at things, overdrafting on things. And like I just felt like I didn't have a good financial situation. And I'll never forget this. I was in my apartment and I took out a notebook and I just wrote down like every bill, like every single thing, everything I owed. And just that act of putting it all down made it like something that I could work with. Because when it's swirling in your head, like
Right.
it doesn't get structured. So
Right.
whatever it is that is your way to do that, some people work better with a notebook. Some
Right.
people work with a spreadsheet. Sometimes it's, my wife, a lot of times for her, it's talking it through. Like
Right.
that's how I've noticed the way she works things out is by having, talking as she's kind of developing her thoughts. And then
I'm
write
like
that
your,
down.
by the way, to interrupt you, I'm like your wife. You see, that's what but that's
Yeah,
what
but you
everyone is.
still write it down. I
Yeah,
think the
we
writing
write
it
it
down
down and we
is
talk it
very
through.
important
Right.
because then you start to see the things that don't make sense as well, right? You can, when I have a spreadsheet and I add up everything and there's a negative number, I'm like, okay. In my head, it seemed like it was a good idea, but I have to adjust something here. You know, those are this. It's a very simple thing to do, but I think that anxiety about risk starts to go down if you're able to do those type of
Right.
fact based uh, review of everything.
You hit so many good points. So I mean, first of all, so let's look at let's look at what we've learned. One is that we want to write it down, right? So that we can start thinking about it, and then we write down what the facts are, and then also how we look at things emotionally, and then talk things through. That means that let's look at getting a mentor. If we're going to open up a business, we're going to do something. By the way, find someone who's done it, so they'll tell you the pros, cons, and different things like that, and start talking to them, and
Mm-hmm.
start working with them, and then that's actually how you achieve that,
Yeah.
and that's good. And I mean that's really good. Then also I want to say one other thing is that also if you're running a business, then you actually want to start having, and then also you have this for your own personal, have a dashboard. You guys know a dashboard of a car. It says how much gas is in there. So what do you think that is? That's how you how much money, may have your bank account, different things like that.
Hmm.
It's got to be a little bit financial. Then you have a speedometer. Are you on pace? Or is there anything decisions that need to be made so you're not
Hmm.
procrastinating? Different things like that in these areas. So then you also have the engine. How's the engine doing? Like control. How are you doing? And then we're not talking about this today. How are you doing self care? Are you getting enough? Are you getting enough sleep? That's one thing I ask people to do. Two, are you working out? Like now, I do a walking meeting every day. So I meet with someone. It's funny. I met with another financial advisor. I was walking. He goes, "Are you near birds and different things?" And then we switched to FaceTime, so he
Hmm.
wanted to see that. And then also I've been walking down near the forum, down in these areas, and so he was commenting on that. So
Hmm.
it's like there's a lot that you can do physically. You want to watch those, so you want to have a dashboard,
Yeah.
and then your business will have those things same written. I don't know if we talked about this on our podcast, but I want to make sure if that when you guys run a business, there's 4 areas of your business you have to focus on: the marketing, and
Hmm.
then you have on the operations, how you make it do what it does.
Hmm.
Third is new products and services. Right now, during this pandemic, it's a great time to open up and do new products and services. And then fourth is the is the financial dashboard. But you want to have a dashboard for everything. So you want to make sure you're walking through those. And then if you have that, then it'll be better to tell you how much risk you have if you have everything written down.
Yeah. All right. Before we continue, I want to let everybody know that if you have a question that you'd like George to answer, it can be about anything finances, relationships, getting things done. And there's a couple of ways you can get your questions to us. You click the link in the show notes of this episode where you can leave us a question as a voice recording. You can do it right from your phone and we'll get it directly. The second way is you can follow George on Facebook. That's the best way to get in touch with him. The link will also be in the show notes. And then the last thing is you can hit me up on my social media locations. I'm at TZ Lucoma everywhere. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So Instagram and Facebook is where I'm most active. So, uh, you know, feel free to reach out. We're looking for more input into what you would like to hear on these shows. So I think as we're kind of trying to wrap up here, one of the things that just kept kind of resonating in my mind as we're talking is the importance of uh, knowledge. So there's the knowledge around the facts, and then there's the knowledge around the uh, domain area. So, like with restaurants, understanding how restaurants work, and then there's the knowledge of yourself. So there's a lot of things around risk that have to do with making sure that you learn the right things before you make a decision. So why don't you just talk a little bit about that and some of the ways people
Right.
can increase their knowledge or learn.
Right. So with the business, there's so many business uh, opportunities for you to learn about this. So I just want to first hit business, and then we'll hit personal finance.
Hmm.
It is first of all for business. SBA is very active right now. Small Business Administration. I don't know if they're doing as much educational events, but different things. But look at those, or also community banks or different areas where there's educational things. Please shoot us an email or different things, and we can find your location. Make sure we send those to you or looking at them. I also want to make sure we give you resources, but that's one thing to look at. And we teach a lot of business classes. I teach them through Kingdom Advisors and Champions in Business to teach
Hmm.
you about what I just said about businesses, about having your marketing, your operations, different things on point. Because the more that you know about things, the more that you because understanding and that it isn't as much risk if you have more wisdom and knowledge. If you understand it coming in, you can take on less risk by doing things in phases or in times. And we kind of talk to you about how you're going to do that.
Hmm.
Now, as far as investments, the same thing. Um, uh, Thomas will put our information at the bottom, but it's really good. We actually have a tool that we use actually that that looks at what your risk is, and then we can build a portfolio exactly
Hmm.
that fits that risk profile. Then, as markets or different things change and everything, we always come back and talk to you about it, and then we can adjust that portfolio.
Yeah.
So that because we will also, I want to say one thing about risk. There's also reward. So we want to make sure you're doing it. But the main thing is, then I'm done. It's this: is you actually just need to write down what your goals are,
Mm.
and then
I was just thinking about that. Yep. Yep.
we walk into them. Well,
Yeah.
hey, good market, bad market. I'm talking about when I say market, you guys, it's not just stocks. So they're bond, but also real estate. All these things. People are like, hey, it's a good time to buy a house. This is a bad time to buy. Hey,
Yep.
let you guys know. Any day that you wake up, that's a good day to do. That's a good day to
Yeah,
do.
I think about even just your career. Like sometimes it's time to, take a leap and either internally in your company look for a different role or look for something outside of that company. And it that might come up in a situation where externally economic situation doesn't look that great, but the Lord is leading you, or that you have a particular expertise that's not being valued properly in the place that you're at. So that comes into the same picture of like just learn about what's needed for that role that you're trying to go for, and like go for it, because all of this ties back, like George said, to your goals. If you're trying to get somewhere, if you're driving this car with your GPS is telling you I want to get to that place, these things around risk are just ways that you make sure that you're not going to get a flat tire, in the middle of the road and not be able to get there. Insurance is like you have, AAA, and if you do get the flat tire, you have somebody that you can call, and not out of your pocket. They're going to put the right tire on and continue going on. So thinking about ways to make sure that. So I'll just summarize everything we said. We said make sure that you're well educated in whatever the area is that you are trying to measure the risk. Make sure that you take some facts to come up with a way to measure what the risk would be, and then tie it to your goals so that there's a particular outcome that you are trying to get. And if you are trending towards that outcome, it means you're on the right track. If you're completely off, maybe it's time to change the strategy. And then, the fourth thing that I think was important, which I want to stress, is the importance of finding people who know about the area or who have been successful in the area, and either having them as mentors. Some of my best mentors have been books. Like I just read a lot of things when I'm interested in a particular area. I either read books, blog posts, all sorts of things so that I can get. If you read enough on a particular topic, you start to see the things that everybody's saying.
Right.
Because people have different opinions on different things, but there's certain things which you're like, okay, that's a principle in this particular area. Because every time I
Right.
read about it, I hear that thing. So that's a good way to give
And that's
yourself more
really
confidence.
good because what I'm saying about mentors and find people who have done it. And then the more you read about it and saying it, then you find out who the scam artists are. Like I don't know why I was picking on real estate. There are always people saying, "Oh, buy this, no money down, buy this link, buy this thing," and then but they haven't done it. Like what I mean?
Hmm.
Like one of the things is I think we've been doing this we've been working together for over 10 years.
Hmm.
So it is like these are things you want to make sure you get the right people and
Yeah.
you stick with them over time
Yeah.
and in doing it. And then the only thing I want to say is this is that also learn to invest in these things and in yourself. Like
Mm.
invest in your own um, education, invest in you
And
learning
knowledge.
about
Yeah.
these things and in doing it. Free information is great. We give out a lot of free information, but then also come to the places also and find out the different programs they have and learn.
Hmm.
We found out, and I'm saying this right now, I'm doing this, is that we found out our clients that pay, they take everything seriously. Like we say we're meeting at 2 o'clock, they on at 2 o'clock, and
Hmm.
they're on and doing that. As people take things like seriously, so we want to make sure that we put find out what your budget is in these areas and what we can do, and then start
Mhm.
finding someone. And then I'm gonna say this to you, wherever you're at in the country, if you have a mentor and they're live, whenever we can start meeting, doing things, invest in that person.
Mhm.
Find someone that is above you, that's doing what you're doing, the next level. Remember the struggling, steady, solid, surplus service. The next level, who's ever on the next level, start talking to them and work with them. And then there's maybe someone that's not quite where you're at. Start mentoring them the same way, because you'll actually learn,
Yeah.
because you'll have to explain what you're doing to
Yeah.
them. You may have a spiritual gift. I'm sorry, you have a spiritual gift, but you have a gift. You have gifts, and you want to be able to show other people, so that as you're bringing people up, we're all going up together.
Yeah, and that's the system. God's system of discipleship, right?
Yep.
I've found that when I have somebody that I am teaching or showing something, it makes me accountable to make sure that I'm doing the things that I'm asking the person to do.
Yep.
So it's another way to just keep yourself on track. So
Yep.
this was a
Set for
great
life.
episode. I want to thank everybody for joining us on another episode of Set for Life Conversations with George. If you have found value from what you heard here today, there's a couple of things we'd like you to do to help us serve you even better. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a question that you want to be answered, drop us a message using the link in the show notes of this episode, or hit us up on social media. If you're interested in going deeper in any of the topics that George teaches about, one of the best ways to do that is to get one of his books from the Ready, Set, Grow series. You can find a link to that in the show notes as well. Actually, a lot of what we talked about today is in the Wealth Cycle. That's the first book in the series. You can also work with George as a financial planner if you're looking to take action and do need somebody to guide you. Those details will be included in the show notes as well. If you just want to learn about George and what he's about, check out his website at www.georgebthompson.com. Thank you once again for joining us. We're excited to keep sharing more conversations with you. We are on this journey with you and feel like we're going to grow as you grow. So thank you very much.
Amen.
Amen.